meeting of the Rappahannock County Planning Commission, April 20th, 2022. If you would please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We just have a couple of housekeeping matters to take care of. Vice Chairman Light could not attend in person, but under the Code of Virginia and our electronic meeting policy for the County Planning Commission, he is allowed to participate electronically and not be on site. Our rules of procedure, I've been informed, do require a motion and a vote to approve Mr. Light's electronic participation. So I will entertain a motion to allow his participation via the Zoom platform. Thank you. Mr. Kohler and Ms. Ishii, any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And Mr. Light, if you could just confirm and make us all jealous the location from which you're participating.
Thank you. I'm here in sunny and warm Southport, Maine.
Thank you. All right. All right, thanks very much. I appreciate that. And Mr. Schulen cannot attend this evening, but we do, I will note for the record, have a physical quorum present, so we will continue. I want to just take a moment and thank everyone for coming out. It's always encouraging to see public participation at this level. I know we have a couple of public hearings tonight, so we'll try to move into those pretty quickly, just so everyone understands how the meeting will proceed. We have on the agenda 2 public hearings. The first one will be an ordinance amendment related to golf driving ranges. And then second, and I believe many of you are here for this, it's a special use permit application for Chester Gap Baptist Church related to an activity field, place of worship in Chester Gap. And I realize as I'm jumping into this, we need to adopt the agenda. So I will entertain a motion to adopt the agenda.
I so move.
Okay. All right, thank you. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Following the 2 public hearings, there will be a general public comment period. At that time, anyone present who wants to comment on anything of interest to the Planning Commission outside of those 2 public hearings may speak. And then following the public comment period, we're going to have several other preliminary reviews of applications that have recently been submitted. And if you're here to speak to any of those 3 applications, 2 are special use permits, Asun and Yang, a tourist home. The second, Rissing, which is an accessory dwelling unit special use permit application. And third, Swindler for a conference center special exception permit application. If you're here to speak to any of those 3 application preliminary reviews, then you would speak during the general public comment period, and we'll remind you of that when that time comes. So moving forward, we will now open the public hearing related to an ordinance amendment for golf driving ranges. And Ms. Summers, if you could just bring us up to date. It's my recollection that we did a couple of months ago as a Planning Commission work through final edits to this amendment to the zoning ordinance, and these are limited golf driving ranges.
That's correct.
And so we've advertised that draft ordinance for public hearing tonight. And it seems to me that we following any public comments during the public hearing, we have 2 paths forward. If we decide that there are more substantive changes that need to be made to the ordinance in draft form, then I think we should punt that to a future work session and then advertise for a subsequent public hearing. Because if it does go forward to the Board of Supervisors, it should go forward largely in its current form that's been advertised, if that makes sense. So with that, I will go ahead and open the public hearing for golf driving ranges. And Ms. Summers, is there anything you want to add, or did I cover it?
You covered it.
Okay. Okay. All right. I'll go ahead and close the public hearing. And I will open it to the Planning Commission. I don't know, Mr. Curry, if you have control of the screen, if we just bring up the.
Ms. Summers has that. I do.
Okay, thanks. Let's just take a quick look at it. So this is limited golf driving ranges, with the adoption of the ordinance amendment, which would require approval by the Board of Supervisors, a special exception permit would still be required for,
Only in the agricultural zoning district.
okay, and then it would not be a permitted use in any other zoning district, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay,
And then, with the additional, standards showed on the screen.
and it seems to me that the way this is currently written, we're talking about a use in an agricultural zone that's about as close to an agricultural use as you can get, and obviously if one were to pursue this type of use in an ag zone, it wouldn't take much, if anything, to return that property to its original ag use. Does anyone have anything they want to say about this current draft ordinance? Anything you want to add or amend?
Certainly. I would think that we ought to add, at least, seeing that this could be out on any road, being all ag areas are covered by this, that we probably should have some kind of screening for for parking areas, for neighbors, because most people come in one car, each to a driving range, so I can say I could easily get 10, 15, or 20 cars sometimes. So I think there ought to be some kind of a parking and screening advice, and then we have a limitation.
I guess, Mr. Kohler, are you contemplating screening within the language of the ordinance itself? Or would that be more appropriately handled if a property owner were to come in and request a special exception permit under the ordinance?
Well, I think if someone is asking for the special exception, I think that there should be screening for parking.
Okay, yeah, my question is, would you want the ordinance itself on its face to include that kind of language, or would that kind of specificity on screen for a parking area come if there was an application for a special exception permit?
Well, I'll open that to discussion, but it seems to me it ought to be part of the ordinance.
Okay. Anyone else have any comments?
Yeah, I do. I agree with you, Mr. Whitson, that allowing some commercial activities in agricultural areas is something not everybody's comfortable with. I think it is appropriate, as you say, if you can have a commercial use that doesn't adversely affect other agricultural uses surrounding it, and allows the land to be returned to an agricultural use easily after if the commercial use ceased. As a general thing, I'm in favor of. In this particular situation, I like a lot of the things we've added in here. I don't think they fully meet what we need. This setup here is that we have currently in agricultural zones, we allow golf courses along with country clubs, so that you can have all the big golf greens out there, and we allow golf driving ranges in commercial and highway commercial areas with very few limitations. And the golf driving ranges, as we all know, are the huge nets that go up in like 450 feet. So what we're contemplating here is whether to allow a limited golf driving range in an agricultural area. And again, I think this use is conceivably compatible if we put enough restrictions on it without being overly so. But I think taking the, requiring that we can't have netting, no containment netting, is important as a visual component of this. In an ag area, we don't want to have these 450-foot tall nets that you see sometimes driving in Loudoun County or other areas. But especially if we take that out, then I think we don't have any setbacks in right now for this, and having a setback is really important because a golf ball, I am no golfer, as I've said many a time, but a golf ball can be hit a long way. So I'm not comfortable with this language without some pretty substantial setbacks. So that, right, for example, there's a golf driving range in Alexandria that has a 450-foot tall net, and the golf balls keep being hit over that net and landing on the cars of the church and on the heads of the churchgoers. And so they're suing it that facility as a public nuisance. And I don't think we want that in Rappahannock. We don't want to be creating a public nuisance. So I think we need setbacks. I would suggest that we would have setbacks as much as 500 feet from any lot line, but that could be reduced if there was a safety evaluation done, which I know has already happened in the use that happened in Sperryville, and they were able to reduce that. I don't think structures should be located closer than 200 feet from any lot line or house. And I think we should consider whether we want to, we have this as the minimum lot size requirement is 25 acres, and I think we should consider a maximum footprint of the facility so that we make sure it's kind of centered in it, and again, not too close to adjacent areas. So I realize what you're saying, that if we add language, then we have to kick it back, but I think those things need to be in it to make this a safe use, and even in an agricultural area.
Okay.
Well, since we have an existing driving range, do we know how far those balls are traveling and whether or not they're going into the road? I mean, it seems to me that a 200-foot setback is probably a good idea. I mean, you can hit a golf ball a long way, and at least for the adjacent property, they probably wouldn't want a slew of golf balls in their field, so. But I'm not an expert.
Okay. Mr. Henry, do you?
Well, if you travel around and look in different counties at the golf driving ranges or those small golf courses, I'm thinking of Greene County, going towards Stanardsville on 230. If you look at that one down in Orange County, there's some. You know, you never, these places have been there for a long, long time, and I've never noticed any amount of cars there. And here, under our ordinance here, 63, where you got one user per acre, up to 35 users, I don't think you're gonna have ever that many cars in that particular situation. If everybody came in a single car and you had a 35-acre site, you would have 35 cars, but if you're gonna have a 10-acre site or a 25-acre site, or a 25-acre site in this particular situation, you know, you got 25 users, and if two people come together, you know, you got 12 cars, and, you know, you look across the county, and I don't think there's a number of places where there's 12 cars parked at one house, and I don't see where we need to micromanage this thing to a point where it's unrealistic.
Yeah.
So that's my opinion.
Mr. Light?
Yeah, I share the concern about the visual impact and the safety. Where I part with my colleagues, I think, is the suggestion that we try to prescribe that in the language of the ordinance.
Thank you.
And maybe we need certainly before this is passed, there should probably be some confirmation of my understanding, which is any kind of site-specific conditions that we would feel compelled to impose to deal with the standard general provisions of the ordinance with respect to safety and other considerations could be applied. And, you know, obviously the thing about setbacks and, you know, where the golf balls go kind of depends on the orientation of where one stands and which way one faces when one hits the ball. So, you know, hitting it backwards, you don't need 200 feet or 200 yards. Hitting it forward, you probably need a lot more than that. So I guess for me, the ordinance language that's here allows us to take those factors into consideration. As Mr. Henry notes, the use is pretty light with the number of users required, so I don't think we're creating a big parking perception. So to me, this language gets us close enough to what we need in the ordinance with additional conditions that could be specified for any given application.
Okay, Mr. Light, would you care to put forward a motion to move this on to the Board of Supervisors?
Sure, I'll do that. I move that we forward this to the Board of Supervisors for approval.
Is there a second to Mr. Light's motion?
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
Yes, I wonder, Mr. Light or others, if you might consider something along these lines. So answering Ms. Ritter's question about the Sperryville facility, which is not operating at the moment.
Yeah.
But that is oriented in such a way that it actually is pretty close to 211.
Yeah.
But they had a safety engineer come in and ask and advise them on the direction the ball should be and the way the fairway should be set up, so that they're hitting the balls far away from that on a multi-100-acre tract. So I wonder if Mr. Light, maybe you would consider something such as this, this kind of language: no fairways, greens, or other hitting areas shall be located closer than, fill in the blank, 500 feet is what I have, from any lot line or public or private road. This requirement may be waived where a safety evaluation by a qualified professional demonstrates that a lesser setback would be equally or more protective of public safety. In no case will the distance be less than 100 feet. I think what I find is often when we have an application come before us and we have to kind of think through basic fundamental things about safety, it's hard for us to do that on the fly, whereas if we're considering ordinance language, it's often easier to have that discretion kind of identified and flagged in the ordinance. So I would like to see it in the ordinance language, but.
Yeah, if we go that direction, then we can't move this onto the Board of Supervisors. So the second thing is, I golf a little bit, and there are no fairways and greens typically in a driving range. It's not a golf course. It's an open space where you hit golf balls straight, so.
Well, I don't know what you would call them, but you could say hitting areas. No
Yeah.
ball shall be hit in that direction. When I spoke with those who had that facility, they identified it as a fairway or green, but
Okay.
I'm not wedded to that.
Any further discussion?
Yeah, this is Gary. Am I on?
Yeah, go ahead.
Can you hear
Yep.
me? No. I guess, I could have imagined that we make something explicit about conditions that are for site-specific safety considerations, but I think something that's as prescriptive as the proposed amendment is too prescriptive, and it doesn't really, we're going to get in just as many problems, it seems to me, by imagining something that very specific that turns out not to be relevant, as we will be to have the application of judgment when we see an actual site. So I believe a site plan would be required in such an application as a matter of course. Does anyone opine on that?
But again, that sounds like that would be in the context of someone, a landowner coming in and seeking a special exception to operate one of these driving ranges in an ag zone. And we're still talking about the fundamental ordinance language itself.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that I don't think we, in these additional standards, that this is not the place where we require site plans. So I assume that site plans are always part of these kinds of requests. And I guess there's okay, we don't have it there. Yeah, that strikes me as an oversight.
Is there a problem with us adding that?
I think to play it absolutely safe, if we're going to make substantive adjustments, including an additional standard along those lines, then I think we need to punt this to a future work session, which I expect we'll probably schedule later in this meeting. And then we'll have to re-advertise and hold a public hearing because we really can't advertise and then make substantive changes and then move it forward.
So we played with this thing for months and months and months and months. So we get here tonight for a public hearing. Nobody from the public has any questions. Nobody shows up. Now, we're gonna go back to the drawing board and punch this thing some more. So where were we at when these questions should have came up ourselves or from the public? It seems to me that the public has a very little interest in this. We know that we're addressing the situation for the driving range that's in Sperryville now that's not being used. We can see what's there. We can see the balls going out into an open field. It's a good distance from the house, from Sperryville, from the houses. So we already did one golf course. I know that golf course in Sperryville is not a driving range, but we were successful there when I was on the planning commission in addressing the safety of putting balls out on 211. You don't see balls laying in the ditch or nobody's been hit in a number of years, you know. So we can micromanage this thing until it is tight as a knotted shoestring.
Right.
Well, we can move it on and move on to other business.
Yeah, I agree with you.
We have a motion on the table.
We do. Is there any further discussion?
I just quickly add, I understand that we have been looking at this for a while. It's been delayed for a variety of reasons. I do think we have gotten feedback from members of the public. I'm not sure all members saw the email that arrived today. And also we had an email previously when this had been pulled from our agenda because of various other reasons. So I think we have had some feedback from the public, again, expressing some concern, as well as feedback from other members who would like to see it. So it's not without any public interest, I would say.
Okay, there's a motion and a second to move this on to the Board of Supervisors for adoption. Any further discussion? Okay, I'll take a roll call vote just so we're clear for the record. Ms. Ritter?
You know, I'll vote for it with the understanding that when the special exception comes up, that there can be further restrictions imposed if necessary for reasons of safety.
You're voting yes for Mr. Light's motion. Okay. Ms. Ishii?
No.
No. Mr. Kohler?
I'll vote aye.
Yes. Okay. Mr. Henry? Mr. Light?
Aye.
And I'll vote aye also. Thank you. So that business is finished and we'll move it on to the Board of Supervisors. Thanks everyone for your input. Okay, next on the agenda, thank you for your patience, is special use permit number 22-02-04, Chester Gap Baptist Church. This relates to tax map number 1-87D as in David. And this is a special use permit application for a place of worship / activity field. So what I would like to do is go ahead and just let Ms. Summers give a brief introduction, after which we'll open the public hearing. And then following the closing of the public hearing, I would invite the applicant to address any questions or any concerns that might have come up during the public hearing phase of tonight's discussion. So I would encourage you to take note as you hear the public speak regarding your application. So Ms. Summers, will you just quickly give us an overview?
Thank you. So Chester Gap Baptist Church is proposing to hold outdoor activities for the church on lot the church purchased many years ago. The church itself is located at 41 Waterfall Road, and this lot is located on Headwaters Road. It is proposed to hold functions such as picnics, youth activities, Easter services, vacation Bible school, etc. on this property due to the limited outside space of the church itself. A 200 by 200 level pad has been graded off for these activities. The property is 24 acres in size and is zoned a residential village. Currently, the lot is wooded and vacant, and no structures are being proposed at this time. We did hear back from the health department that they have no objections to this request, provided that the church proposes to use portable facilities, and also from the Virgin VDOT that they have no objections as well.
Thank you for that. I'll go ahead and open the public hearing for this special use permit application, Chester Gap Baptist Church. And if you could try to limit your comments to 5 minutes or less, but we're not particularly tough here. So do your best. And if you simply raise your hand, we'll call you up, and the microphone has a handle on the back so you can adjust the height when you come up so that we can hear you. Anyone wishing to speak? Yes, sir, you're close. Would it be easier if you just stay seated?
No, I think
Okay. All right, thanks. And importantly, if you could state your name for the record, and if you know it, the voting district in which you reside.
Okay, I believe it's Wakefield, is where I reside. I'll read what I've written so I don't miss anything. Greetings, my name is Jim Vidito, and I live at 8 Headwaters Road. I hope you received the letter that I sent and were able to have time to read it. I also hope that you had time to look at the lay of the land where the special events venue is wanting to be established. If you did, you saw that my property is a low-lying property at the corner of Headwaters and Chester Gap Road. The church property is at a higher elevation to the west and north of my property. A lot of the rain runoff from the mountain above ends up flowing across my lot. As you may know, the church recently subdivided and created 3 5-acre properties that now surround my property. The church kept a right-of-way through 2 of the properties. One property, directly north of mine, was sold to Mr. Settle. One lot is still on the market, and I have recently found out that they took the 3rd lot that is directly on Headwaters Road and adjoins my property to the west off the market and intend to build a parking lot on it. You know well my concerns for my spring. Will the guidelines and requirements set forth by conservation specialist Richard Jacobs in his letter to past County Administrator John McCarthy, dated January 16, 2009, be followed when the church builds the final access road and this possible parking lot? Though the actual special event site is visually buffered from my house, the access and parking are not. All traffic to the site will go by my front door. When I review the actual application for a special use permit, I conclude that many of the questions cannot be answered in a positive way. Will it adversely affect the value of the adjoining property? Yes. Will it adversely affect the quality of life of the surrounding neighbors? Yes. Will it cause traffic, noise, and safety issues? Yes. Does this location meet the road width requirement? Probably not. Headwaters Road is only 14 feet wide, and I thought there was a requirement for special events places to have a road at least 20 feet wide. Will it cause ecological issues regarding groundwater, erosion, and sediment? Possibly. Are the special events they have listed keeping by legal right within residential village zoning? No. Should they be considered for special permission? I don't think so, based on what I have mentioned here and in the letter I sent you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yep, go ahead. Thank you.
Hello, and thank you for your consideration. My name is Angelica Vidito, and I live on 8 Headwaters Road as well. I and other residents of Headwaters Road are very concerned about the detrimental effects that would result if a special use permit is granted to allow for large public events. As you know, it's a narrow 1-lane road, and some of my neighbors and I have reached out to you privately with phone calls and emails to voice our concerns. But I would like to show you a petition that others have signed to request that the permit not be granted so as to avoid the hardship and hassle that the increased traffic and noise would have on the community. So if I could hand this to you to pass. So growing up here with my siblings and other neighborhood kids, we often like to ride our bikes, play basketball, go down the road to walk, check the mail. And the narrowness and the speeding of cars has always been a safety issue. Even back in the day, my parents requested that the state put in a sign saying watch for children, and it's still there to this day. So even now there are numerous kids who go down to and fro from the bus stop. Like I said, they like to play skateboard, play basketball. And I would also like to point out that the visibility coming out of Headwaters Road into Chester Gap Road is very poor. And so it could be problematic for nearly every resident of Chester Gap that are driving down the mountain. When lines of cars from the festivals and concerts that we've heard that are also being planned for these events will be coming in and out. So my neighbor, Maybelle Gilkey, who lives just across the street on 13 Headwaters Road, cannot be here today for health reasons, and she also wanted me to ask a few questions that she would like to be considered and answered before a decision is made on this permit. She wanted to know how creating a special events venue at this location would help the community, and if it would be available to the community for other events. She wanted to know if it would be rented out, and if there would be outdoor weddings and other activities happening on the weekends. How would the church monitor the property? And would this special use permit be permanent or valued for a limited period of time? Finally, she wanted to know if the members of the Planning Commission have seen the site and the road for themselves before they make the decision on this issue. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm assuming there are other people who want to speak, so I won't say anyone else. Next.
My name is Edna Grove. I'm the current chairman of the board at Chester Gap Baptist Church. At the recommendation of this board, when we met a month ago, we've been off doing our homework. We have reached out to our neighbors. We actually composed a letter and mailed to 11 Warren County residents that adjoin our property and 31 Rappahannock County residents that are near our property. In those letters, we included a self-addressed return card, and we've gotten 27% of those cards back. I'm going to leave you with a copy of this book when we're done. We also mailed a direct flyer to all 262 homes in Chester Gap. We got back 29% of those. A copy of all of those is also included in this book. Favorable responses. People want to see the church grow and want to see this type of activity in Chester Gap. In addition, we've got just about half of our weekly congregation here tonight in support of what's going on. Any event, as the health department indicated, would have porta potties, of course, as needed. We have a 5-acre tract, as you say, near the entrance. We don't plan on clearing that all, just what we need for parking. The events we're talking about are small. We can't get the Rolling Stones, as we said last month. We can't afford that. These are small community events that we're talking about, picnics, just minor things like that, things that we can reach out into the community. We have no intentions of renting the site ever, but we would like it to be available to first responders for a helipad. There's not anywhere that a helicopter could land on that end of the county other than the road. Lastly, I wanted to point out that in 2012, a special use permit was approved for this site by both the Planning Commission and the Zoning Administration with 2 conditions. And we would like to abide by those 2 conditions to this day. The first condition would be that there was no excavation for stormwater management above Mr. Vitito's property, nor would we have any impact on his spring water source. And the second one was that we would get VDOT approval of the entranceway. So the use of this property, whatever we deem as the appropriate activity, is vital to the growth of the church, to our mission and ministry opportunities, and we're really looking forward to getting your approval and ratifying what was passed several years ago. In addressing some of the comments that were made, as you said, the actual cleared spot is not
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Okay, anyone else? Yeah, we'll just hear from the public and then we'll close and then you're welcome to come up. Yeah, go ahead.
I'll just make something short.
Your name, just your name and where you live.
I'm Ashley Clark. I live on 148 Apache Trail. One of the uses for the land would be Vacation Bible School. We are a small county. We have several small churches throughout the county. However, if you've ever tried to do a Vacation Bible School in a small church, it's very challenging. To have a open field to where we could more accessible do the games and the crafts and different things like that for the public and invite the kids in, that would be amazing. We do a slip and slide at the end of every VBS down the little hill. The kids love it. Parking is not the greatest there for it. However, if we were granted permission for this, it would be very cool for more kids to come out, the kids to be able to do different events. It'd just be a really neat opportunity for not only my kids, several years down the road, the grandkids, all kinds of stuff. So I think it'd be a neat opportunity.
Great, thank you. Anyone else want to speak to this application? Oh, okay. Suddenly since time was running out. Okay.
Hi, my name is Kelsey Williams. I've been a member not super long, like a year? I've been a member like a year, but I've been attending for like 5 years. These are my two little ones over here. You can have another one. Mainly, we would love to have an area to grow into. Like she said, it's hard to have space to put kids for VBS, and we want to reach the community. Our goal is to reach them. There's lots of kids up there that are curious. At VBS, they come especially on day 5. It's the last day when we have the slip and slide. The surrounding kids will come around and they're real interested in it. And we know that's our way of ministry. That's our way to reach them. Sometimes we can be the bright spot in their families. They can take that back and share it. And we know that they are the backbone of our church. If we don't have little ones, then where does our church go? And so, really, that's a big ministry that I'd love to see grow there. And that's all I have.
Thank you very much.
So I'm probably the only one that's neutral here, right?
Congratulations.
So I'm the one that owns the most property surrounding this. My name is Kevin Sutton. I owned property against the church before the church ever owned it. I really think this is getting kind of blown out of proportion as far as the huge events. And like I said, I'm neutral, but I'm fine with it. So, I don't know. Both sides might be mad with me now, but anyway, that's all I have to say.
Welcome to politics.
What's your last name?
Settle. The one Mr. Vito spoke of. I'm the one, I got 5 acres in Warren County and 5 acres that I just bought from that borders most of the church property on the road side.
Norma Settle, and not any real relation to Kevin. But I like to echo that this is something that we really need. As Angelica said, I grew up there. I've been there all my life, and probably never going anywhere. As a matter of fact, I'm trying to talk my brother into buying that other property so we can build a house there. But the church has been a big part of my life. I've been a member there since I was a child. The house that they live in was my grandparents' home. So I would like to echo that I feel for you as well. But just knowing what that place meant to my grandparents and knowing that the property that the church owns belonged to my grandparents, that's how it all originated. So it's really important, I think, in my heart, to keep the legacy going. I don't have any children. God never blessed me with any. But I can see this is our future, and we need this. We now have a large youth group, and it's my understanding that we have some new teenage kids that have become involved. And with youth today, as much as they get in trouble, we need to keep them focused. And if we can do that by having that pavilion, something for them to look forward to come to, then that's what we need to do. I mean, I empathize with the traffic, with the noise, but I don't think it's going to be that way. If it's noise, it's going to be positive noise. It's not going to be partying. It's not going to be drugging. It's not going to be all the things that we try to keep from kids. So I hope you'll consider our proposal and so we can move forward. Like I said, we've owned this land for a long time now, and we just really need to get something going on it. Brother Roger has been a huge point for us, and he's been exceptional in getting us started with this, and we just don't want to let it go. So I'm hoping you'll consider our proposal. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Hey there, my name is Doug Gilmore. Thank you for your consideration. I just want to say that, first off, we love the community, right? I didn't grow up in this area, but I've lived here for 14 years, and I fell in love with it. And I understand the concerns about, the traffic and the noise and those kinds of things, but we're trying to be good neighbors. We really don't want to alienate anybody, and we just want to create a safe space for our congregation and the community. So, I definitely, like I said, I can understand your concerns, but we definitely want to be respectful, and we definitely want to do the right things and make sure that everybody can have a win here. So, thank you.
Thank you. Hi.
I'm Roxy Jennings. I grew up on Headwaters Road. I actually live in Rileyville, and I travel about a half an hour to go to church at my home church. I love it there. Mr. Benetote is a great neighbor to my mom since my dad's passed. The property that belonged to Stanley Williams, he was a very, very dedicated Christian man, and it would be an honor to him to get the special permit to have events to upbuild God's kingdom to reach more people. And we would love to have you join us. If you like bluegrass or Vacation Bible School, I mean, anybody would be welcome. Our heart is to grow God's kingdom and to welcome everybody and to be a good neighbor to everybody, to show loving kindness. So we hope that we can get the permit, and we hope that you would join us, and we would not do anything to damage your property or to be a bad neighbor.
Just a minute. Anyone else who hasn't already spoken who wishes to speak? All right. Sure, go ahead.
I just want to be clear that we're not opposed to small events that they've been having. They've been occasionally having sunrise services, picnics. We have nothing against that. But we have heard proposals for a pavilion that would hold 400 people, that there's plans for concerts that will have hundreds of cars coming. Even if it's a small concert, that could be at least 100 cars or 200 people. So it's those big events where we have to, pull to the side of the road to let our neighbor pass, but now we'll be pulling to the side of the road on this narrow road to let, dozens of cars go by. And also the infrastructure, first you have a clearing, then you build a pavilion, and then when the next pastor comes and he doesn't respect what's been said here as far as preserving the nature and the woods and this land, when is he going to build the mega church or fields that have runoff and then our water's poisoned? And so we don't want to be bad neighbors either, but we do want to preserve our land and we do want to live in peace. So if we can both have what we want, if there could be restrictions on the permit as to size and limit, that's what we would ask. So.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak? Okay, with that, I'll close the public hearing and then I'd invite the applicant to make any statement you'd wish. And then if you wouldn't mind just hanging out in the front row and if any of my colleagues have questions for you.
I think the questions would be the best thing. I find that people sometimes dream bigger than we can afford. This is half the population. The church, when it is slam full, will hold about 185 people. 185 people cannot build a multi-million-dollar complex. They cannot even pave a parking lot. Even though we don't own one, we need one. So the modified plan was to try to find the activity field, and then way down the road, if they grew, a small pavilion, a functional pavilion with electricity. And no point is this to ever be a fundraising piece. And I recognize that I am a pastor and they come and go. But I am honored tonight that my entire board, who are members here, who have children and grandchildren here, who make it a commitment to honor what they say and do to move forward. We were amazed to discover that in 2012, this has already been approved. And I couldn't find where this has been rescinded. But we didn't mind doing the homework and did not mind moving forward with everything going on. But I want to go back to our conversation. There is a Commonwealth of Virginia statute that talks about worship. Every activity, event, meeting, concert is based on worshiping God and developing character. And that's where we are. We do have two events. One is a concert that we propose. It is local people. We can't afford $5,000 artists that would attract hundreds of people. The parking lot is grass. We have the 5 acres that we took off the market because as we did our own analysis, we wanted to have parking away from the Headwaters Road, and that will accommodate with gravel. That is important. So as we go through the pieces of it, we truly want to be the good neighbor. I also am delighted that we have already discussed on how we can make the front entrance look orderly, inviting, and clearly defined, which is great. And of course, VDOT approved the drive that we have. And so we're waiting right now on our final permit to get to our property. We have to go through one of the lots that we're hoping to sell. The road that we had is no longer functional because Mr. Settle owns it now. We can't use our road. We have to redirect our road. And so we'll be glad to answer any questions that you have, and I'm grateful, by the way, to all our dear people and our neighbors, and we'll be glad to answer questions.
Thanks a lot. I'll go ahead and open it to my colleagues.
Esther, we were up there this morning and went up the road and saw the clearing. What I was wondering was, It's, the places where you're gonna put the parking are at the bottom of the hill, right? So how will elderly people get up to the?
Because we're not building a building, if we rented a tent, we understand those tents are 40 feet by 110 feet, 120 feet. That's a 200 by 200. Handicapped people, restrictions can drive all the way up to the top and park by the building.
Okay,
Yes, ma'am.
and
By the
so,
parking
yeah,
area.
and then were you thinking of putting gravel on the road?
Yes, under my understanding of all the things that we're dealing with,
Yeah.
when you disturb so much land, you have to get all these things. Even though we're undisturbing less than an acre, we still went through all the technical stuff. If it's more than a 10% grade, it's got to have the rocks in it. The engineering drawings show where all the culverts have to be.
Yeah.
So we are not just putting in whatever, it will meet standards. It is a 12-foot drive going up to our property, but it stops at the property line. Okay?
Thank you.
Mr. Kohler,
Uh,
we can come back to you if you're not ready.
Yeah, I'm not quite ready.
Okay. Ms. Ishii?
All right. I guess, Pastor Foreman, maybe you can answer some of these, or maybe Michelle, Ms. Summers can answer some of them.
Sure.
And I appreciate, the importance of this issue to your congregation and to the neighbors in the community. It's an awesome community up there, and I can feel the spirit and passion of this community, and that's really wonderful. But I did wonder on this, so you plan to put, what we have before us is the application for a special exception or special use permit for the property at the top, for use by you for a place of worship at the top with a few, as you explained it to us, a few very small specific events. But your broader plan, which I don't hear you saying is what you're asking for at this moment, is bigger. But what in the immediate future, so parking, you are outside of this permit application, you plan to put a parking area down on the lower lot.
No, for 99% of everything we do, the parking up at the 200 by 200 is quite sufficient. But if an event required overflow, we would have attendants on our own property, just have them park on the grass. But park them in an orderly way that people can safely get in and get out without being blocked in, and they can move out. We have no intentions of building a parking lot, scoring off a parking lot, changing the grading on a parking lot, except for the area that's already been leveled with permit because there's ample parking up there.
That's helpful. And I ask that because just the overall impact on drainage, I know.
Oh, I would not even dream of trying to move dirt for that parking lot in these days. Not going to happen. That may be another pastor, but it won't be this one.
And so given that statement, your plans, again, I've heard various things on are you planning to keep the size of the area you cleared? Or are you
Yes.
planning to expand?
The cost of getting a 200 by 200 was significant. Absolutely. Should down the road, and I did speak to members, we have a dream. You have to know where you want to go. But it's taken them 20 years to get to this point. I don't foresee any of us living to see a pavilion of any kind of structure. It's just too costly. A building that was on the 2012 application was calculated at $900,000 to $1.5 million. You notice what happened. If we were to do the Dream Pavilion, that's $750,000. Not going to happen. But we can dream, can we not? But until then, we want to dream doing stuff. We've decided and believe that paying, no disrespect, the county taxes, that is not tax exempt. And until we build a building for worship, it will not be tax exempt. So we pay our taxes, and we want to use the building, use the space.
And thank you, that's also helpful. And the Vacation Bible School, what use do you plan to use of that? I mean, it's wonderful, we all love Vacation Bible School,
Yeah.
let's be frank, but how often would it be? Are you gonna hold all of it up there, or just go up there occasionally?
That decision, we do it once a year. It's in the afternoon, evenings. Based on weather conditions, there's no way if it's inclement weather, you could have anything up there. We would like to do, of course, the special Friday night rally. That's where the parents come, see what the boys and girls do, so we can have the slip and slide, have more control, because safety is a concern for all of us in where we are. I can't tell you specifically the schedule. And here's the thing about Baptist churches. If you do it the same way every year, you start declining. So trying to capsule, lock it in, you're going to do it this way every year, well, then you might as well not waste your money. Innovation and creativity is important. Don't change the message, change methodology. And that's important. So having the change. I don't see anything happening every year because it gets old. So we get complacent with it. People get complacent with it. People slack off. They don't stay sharp with the security and everything that's got to be dealt with. So rotating a schedule is important.
Okay, thanks, that's all I have for the moment. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Mr. Kohler, I'll circle back to you if you want.
All right. So there were a few comments that were made that were, that one was having, that concerned me a little bit. One was having deputies for crowd control or traffic control.
Let me help you with that.
Thank you.
Not bragging, just telling you the facts. I'm a safety security national consultant for churches and schools, certified by Cambridge University. I don't do anything that I don't have security on site. When you have it on site, that is a deterrent. So when we have boys and girls that could be abducted, I want eyes both on our lay people, but when we have guests that we may not know all of the children, having a deputy on site is important. And no matter who you are, we want to protect you. That's why a deputy on something larger than our people would be helpful. But I only know of one event, and that's our children's event that we did in 2020 called Harvest Festival on the fairgrounds up by the fire station. And we had some of the officers just hang out. They ate a lot of food, had a good time. They were great public servants. And we market and promote this for first responders, especially those who have to work on Halloween and they can't take their children to a carnival or an event type thing. And so we promote it on all the local counties for that. Nurses, doctors, EMTs, all of that. All the fire stations got notices and the police departments and sheriff departments. It's an outreach. If I can get them to come to one event, maybe they'll come on a Sunday.
Is that a one-day event?
It's a 2.5-hour event. We set it up, invest all of that for 2.5 hours. You need a good start time and you need a definite stop time. Because these dear people can't work 8 hours setting it up, then service it for 6 or 7 hours, and then take it all down.
Believe me, I know.
So they have a 4.5-hour commitment when they do it.
So what is the plan for the protection of the spring?
We are looking, all of the materials have been submitted on all the drains and everything else, the filters and all. I mean, we're not doing any water stuff events up there. If you're going to use water, you're going to bring a bottle of water or we have to provide it. There's no well, we're not running water. We will have self-contained porta potties that we rent. They pick them up and they take them out.
Well, my question is really about the neighbor's spring that you'll be driving by. I tried to find that spring. I wasn't quite sure where it was.
Mr. Vidito may tell you, I have not seen it, but according to all of the records and the drawings, any water will not go there anyway because it's going to go in ditches, 10% grade, to be on rocks, to the culverts, and it'll be diverted to where it needs to go.
And the road is going to be how wide? I mean,
12 feet.
Are you going to need to have people passing, is that,
No, on events like these, most everybody's coming at one time, going up, and when it's all over, they go down. Yeah. Because we don't anticipate, we originally looked at an 18-foot road, but we didn't see a need for it because we don't have that many cars coming and going.
and has the county approved this road that you're discussing?
I don't know, Gary, have y'all approved my road yet?
If it's not approved, it will be.
Tomorrow?
It's perfunctory.
Thank you. Can we get that on record?
Does this need to be a certain depth of base and ditching and that type of thing?
No, that's a private owner concern. It's their access road, how well it stands up to traffic, there's how much maintenance they have to do. Erosion and sediment control has to meet state standards, which they've shown they have.
Okay, thank you. And now you had 5 lots, and you've moved them around. You've
The subdivision, yeah, they were done years ago, correct.
Right, and you reconfigured them. And did you sell the front lot off? I'm not clear what was sold.
The one running alongside of Headwaters remains in the ownership of the church,
Sure. Then there's one behind it.
which is for sale, has not been sold.
But you took the park site from that one, and which used to be where the pavilion, where your graded area is. There's no.
There were no, from my knowledge, there was no perk sites up where the. Yes, they were on here, Mr. Settles, which is the odd-shaped piece.
Well, the second lot used to, on the left, used to have a perk site and a house site, and that is now part of the, according to this drawing, this is now part of where the graded area is.
May I look over your shoulder?
Sure. So
This one we own.
Yep.
That one is for sale.
Right,
This one is the one Mr. Settles owns.
right,
And this is where the site is on the 28 acres relay.
right. But this one, you used to have these 2 lots this way.
Correct.
And this one had the perk site here, which is now not on that lot anymore. So there is no perk site on that lot at the moment.
No, not to my knowledge, no. And I've seen no evidence of it, so whatever was done is gone.
Right, this is on the floor.
Right. I mean, my concern was that you have a lot that does not, I don't know how you're gonna sell it with a house if you don't have a perk site on it, but maybe you can get a different perk or something.
Well, anyone who purchases it can put a condition of purchase on making sure it perks. Mr. Settle, one of the reasons we've got to get that road moved is he may want to do something like that down the road, no pun intended. So we've got to get the road away and put it on our own property.
Okay. And he bought the lot, Mr. Settle bought the lot directly north of Mr. Vitito.
That's
Is that right?
Joins me on the other 5 acres I have in Warren County.
That's the one that kind of breaks off to the right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. And then there's still a lot in the back that would be
The 28 plus acres that we own, we retain.
Right, but there's a lot back there for a house too?
No, sir.
No.
Can you point out the ones that's sold?
Sure.
Yeah.
Shrink it a little bit, Michelle.
For those looking, this is Chester Gap. Here's Headwaters Road. This little indention is a neighbor that already lives there. Mr. Vitito's property is right here. The VDOT drive that's already been put in is right here. And the dotted line went way up here and actually curved around. So this lot, this 5 acres here, we have taken it officially off the market. It is not listed, and the church voted unanimously not to sell it. This one is still for sale. And this piece here, all the way up to the point, is the one that is going to be kept for ministry. It creates a barrier around the 200 by 200. Mr. Settles owns this piece here, and currently this logging road is what it is.
Yeah.
The logging road cuts into him and then goes out. And so the proposed road comes up and stops at the property line. It keeps us under the 1 acre of disturbance, erosion, and control. And there's where we are.
So I see now that you vacated the line at the top, that little.
Yes, that's
that
been
used to be a
yes.
line.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
And when we resubmitted for subdivision, you could not, no one could buy this one at all because it was inaccessible.
Right.
The church, when they were going to build this very big, nice building, was going to be way down in here. And so that's why they had all these other parcels.
Okay.
So making it more functional for activities and recreation makes more sense and doable.
Okay. It just looked to me like the original church was going to be on Mr. Settle's lot.
I think so, part of it, yes, sir.
So when I was up there, it appeared that I was driving in directly beside Mr. Vidito's line. I could not tell where the property line was.
We're going to fix that. We both have to make sure we know where the property line is, so he kind of stays on his side and we stay on our side.
Okay. Because there was a stake for a 50-foot right-of-way.
Yes, there's definitely some stakes, but it kind of gotten encroached on, and we're going to clearly put in some nice parameters.
Okay. All right. Let me look at my notes here for a moment. Thank you. This is very helpful. I can learn a little bit about this. So the vacation Bible school is usually about a week, isn't it?
1 week, yes.
I think ours always is about that. But you're thinking like 1 day or 2 days up on the flat.
Weather, all kinds of conditions. If we had an incredible, bodacious group of kids, our church is not that big. We're going to put them up on the land because we just don't have the space in the building.
And I think those are my questions right at the moment. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Kohler. I'll just quickly jump in. I don't have much. It is an interesting zoning question. It's zoned residential village, and that's why you're here, and perhaps will be before the Board of Zoning Appeals, because a special use permit's required to have a place of worship in a residential village zoning district. It's interesting to note other special permitted uses in that same zoning district could extend up to a medical care facility, a residential care facility, a school. And so when I look at this in context, relatively speaking, and recognizing that this is sort of perhaps a 5 to 10 year use and maybe have bigger plans down the road, at least for the time being, to some extent, you're taking this transparent and a wholly open process of doing everything right and going through the grind of public hearings like this, at least lets everyone know your intent and that you intend to be a good neighbor. And so this, to me, seems like a very light use. The only question mark I have, and I don't know if my colleagues will have the same question or not, but I have heard from a couple of people, and Ms. Vidito, on your second go-around during the public hearing, alluded to perhaps some kind of limitation on the number of people per event. And as you're trying to grow your church, it doesn't feel great suggesting that. And so I guess my question to you is whether you would be willing to agree to any kind of...
No.
No? Okay.
No. And I'm not being disrespectful.
No, I understand.
I could wish and pray that we would have that problem.
Right.
We're just not going to have it. And people vote by their boots. They're not going to come unless we do a lot of crazy things. Crazy things cost a lot of money. And for us, they no longer, as a church, can afford a full-time pastor. I'm part-time retired. When I go to the high country, it will be a bivocational pastor again. Everyone volunteers. I'm not good at it, but I print the bulletin. So here's where we are. The days of the big mega churches are gone. Our world is truly going to hell in a handbag. We are swatting at gnats at best. When you say that it is a church site, about 80% of a possible audience will not show up. We are unapologetically a Christian-based, Baptist-focused ministry that just limited our audience.
Mr. Light, we haven't forgotten about you. Do you have anything you want to comment on or ask Pastor Orman?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to everybody who's spoken. I think this last exchange is really where the sort of interface between the interests of the applicant and the interests of the community really, is somewhat at odds. I appreciate the question that you asked, Mr. Chairman, about whether the applicant would welcome or accept limitations, but I would suggest that it is our job as commissioners, if we think that for this use to be suitable in this location, it would be incumbent on us to try to establish what kind of limits would make it so. And clearly, to me, the event ground itself and the types of uses that are imagined up on that site with the current clearing and current land disturbance are not a problem. To me, it's about how many cars are going up there, and where are what's being done to accommodate the parking. And I with all due respect to the applicant and the desirability of this use, I do think that is this road and this location does have some limitations. And I don't think we would be doing our job as stewards of the zoning and land use ordinance without kind of reflecting on what is a reasonable traffic flow into such a kind of constricted area. So I don't quite know what that is. I guess I would like to hear from the applicant where it sounded like up at the, most of the events are covered by cars going all the way up to the site. I haven't heard much about what the capacity is for parking up there. I heard reference to handicap parking being up there, but it also sounds like there's some general acknowledgement that some level of overflow parking is envisioned for the lower lot. Maybe correct me if I'm wrong about that, but without some discussion of how many people in automobiles we're talking about, and without some consideration of limiting that, I don't feel like we are doing our jobs.
I may have to turn to Gary on this one. Gary, how wide is a parking spot?
8 or 9 feet.
Okay, that piece is 200 by 200, so if you just use one strip, that's 200 feet divided by 10. You can park 20 cars easily along that. Most of our 5 to 7 events might have 10 or 15 cars. I don't envision overflow except maybe the carnival, the Harvest Festival for children. So, yeah, it's just not there, the need, but it would be addressing, should you have a need, are you going to force people to headwaters? No. We can park them on their own property. And I'm going to have to ask, I'm trying to learn. I respect and value what you're doing, but in 2012, this and the next group up approved almost $1 million+ building with parking and paving and everything.
I'd like to comment on that.
Sorry. Yeah, sorry. No, we've already, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, we've already closed the public hearing.
Okay. I don't know if I answered his question or not. Be glad to know.
Well, you certainly helped, but I'm still having trouble tracing between the, it's all small numbers, it's mostly locals, it's mostly small, and the position that you seem to be strenuously objecting to the idea of any kind of limits. So
Well,
I don't know how to reconcile that.
And I appreciate that. Here's the thing. Who's going to enforce the limits? Whose interpretation are the limits? I had someone say, well, you're going to have to be out of there by 7:30 or 8 o'clock at night. I'm thinking, what if it's a father-son camp out? That's kind of hard to do. You've got 4 men with 4 boys, and the rules say you got to leave at a certain time. And we have legalists in the county who would call the sheriff on me and say, the county gave you permission, but you had to be out by 7. So my pushback is not to be disrespectful, but I'm kind of listening to your conversation about a putting range or whatever that thing was. How do you define every ministry opportunity to set up criteria that's fair and equitable to the community and to the church? I just know we're going to be a good neighbor and do the best we can.
Well, I appreciate and respect that. To me, the only parameter that to me is really of our interest to the public harmony is the automobile traffic and parking. And to me that is something we should reasonably be thinking about. But anyway, that's all I have for the time being.
Okay, thanks. Mr. Henry?
Mr. Curry?
Sir.
The road that I guess is kind of being reviewed, is that being reviewed by an engineer, or is it being reviewed by staff to see the standards? Is this road being built to any standards that we have in the ordinance now?
It is not. It's a private access road at this moment on their own property. Should they have other desired uses of the road in the future, I suppose it might be reviewed under that context, say building or put up or something like that.
Okay. So in our road standards for subdivisions, I believe that there's a width required, ditching required, a crown.
12-foot minimum for the hard surface, and then ditch bank and crown, et cetera. So type 2 subdivision road.
Yeah. So this road here that's being proposed is 12 foot in width and will provide adequate access for fire and rescue?
Yes.
Okay, all right, good. This is a great example, Mr. Supervisor, where if we had a GIS system, it would be wonderfully used right here. You can have topo, aerials, overlays. This is a great opportunity today to have a GIS system.
Point well taken.
Wonderful, wonderful. It would be very informative, showing sources of water, everything. So this is be a great planning tool that we could definitely use here. There's some ambiguity here that I think we need to address. In your application, you said 6 to 7 times a year. We had in our write-up 5 to 8, and we're proposing, the staff is proposing 8 events a year. But we have to talk about what is an event. You're talking here sometimes about 2 to 4 hours as being an event. Then other times we're talking about maybe a couple days being an event. Whether it's a fall festival or that's all day or something else. So what is an event? Is it going to be over in one day, or could it be a 3-day event? What is an event?
Usually an event's a couple of hours. Now, it may take, if we have to rent a tent or something like that, it may take a day to get the hardware in and that type. But the events are usually just a couple of hours.
So if we said an event is no more than 1 day, that would be fair to you?
Okay? A worship revival could be 3 evenings. Now, if you wanted us to fudge and say, okay, every one of those evenings is a different event, we could work around the rule. But you would announce a revival Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday from 7 to 8:30.
Okay, are you calling that one event or 3 events?
We would call that one event. It's a revival for whatever. So that would be one event. But again, the exposure with people is usually an hour and a half to 2 hours.
But in just what you said, that's a 3-day, I'm gonna say activity instead of event.
Thank you.
Because people are coming in and out every day, so that's 3 trips in, 3 trips out of somebody. So that could be interpreted as 3 events there. So that could be a gray area that somebody could make a phone call on, that would have to be addressed later.
And they could, but again, I tried to say earlier, doing something every year consistently mitigates it. So you might do something. We would advertise, so any neighbor who wants the details or has a concern can clearly let the church know. And again, as I said the last time I was here, our goal is to grow and love on our neighbors, not make them angry. So if we can accommodate them in any way, we're going to do that. Because most of these people are kin to somebody.
Michelle, can we pull the plaque back up? So we had some conversation earlier about parking, and the last thing you said was that if you strip that green area and use that for parking, you did a tabulation on cars you could have. But then earlier, I think I heard some talk about parking along the road going in.
Not by us, you
Okay.
didn't.
So, okay, good. So all the parking, any parking that's gonna happen is gonna happen in or immediate around the green area.
Yes.
And going up the newly constructed 12-foot access road that's gonna get over towards your neighbors, there's gonna be no parking on that road.
It's 12 feet, they couldn't do it. They would mess up safety, people getting in and out. If we had to have an ambulance come up, we
No
can.
parking there. So absolutely all the parking is gonna happen around the green area, but definitely above that property line that goes across there.
Michelle, can you roll it up a little bit? I did say, that if we could not park everybody here, this would be the overflow right here, which is also our property. You come in and put in the overflow there. And there's a passage in Romans that says giving preference one to another, just so help you there.
There's a passage too, a whole bunch
Yeah,
of
it's
them
a
around
great
in
passage. No, you gotta hear this. It's a good one. You're gonna use it at your next church. When you're running out of parking on Sunday morning, you have your church leaders park in remote parking, giving preference to your guests. Most church leaders get there early, so they take up the best parking. But we are teaching them the Bible. So giving preference one to another means if we had a big anticipated, more than the upstairs could handle, we would park some of our workers' cars at the bottom and then shuttle them up with a van or whatever.
So you did a little math a while ago on the green. Do that math again for us.
Well, it's a 200 by 200. If you were to go to Jefferson Rental in West Virginia to rent a tent, the width of that biggest tent is 40 feet wide. The longest one is 120 feet long. So if I have 200 feet and I'm only going to use 40 feet wide, I have 60 feet from the edge of the tent to the edge of the cleared area. Then I have 140 foot deep, but then I have another 60 feet of cleared spot. So there's lots of parking opportunity on the area that was leveled with permit.
I think he was a little bit more detailed earlier, like in the number of cars.
Well, I asked Gary, how wide is a typical parking place? Well, if you said 12, 9. Okay, so 10, because I'm Mississippi. So if you have 200 feet divided by 10, that's how many cars you can get down one strip.
20 cars.
20 cars. And technically, you could double park them because we got plenty of space.
think Mr. Light touched on it, and, Mr. Whitson brought it out a little bit. I think we really want to push us along and help you and get this going. And, but at the same time, turning you loose with an unlimited number of cars up there ain't gonna happen. So you gotta help us a little bit here to get a cap on this thing. And maybe, if we could talk about X number of people for a couple years, and then after that, look at only the number of people again. And if you've been successful, you may have to do some improvements for parking above your green area there.
Sure.
But we're willing to work with you.
That terrain is almost impossible. May I confer with someone for just a second?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Cars as opposed to people.
60 cars. We will always be within that, I'm sure. That gives us 2 double decks on the end, and if we had a few overflow, they'd go on the lower level.
We very seldom use that word double deck in Rappahannock.
Okay. I'm from Mississippi. It doesn't mean anything there. 60 cars.
So 60 cars, average 2 people, that's 120 people, average 3 people, 180 people.
And I think that's the kind of the number I said the last time we were here.
And I guess, too, these 8 events, we got to get a handle on that.
A handle on what, please, sir?
What is 8 events? Are you talking about, I guess we're not talking about 8 days.
No.
You're talking maybe something that's a revival that's 3 or 4 days, and then maybe something else during the year. So I think we might say 8 events, but a total usage of the property of X days per year. Follow me?
Okay. I'm hearing you.
See what I'm saying?
I'd have to go to legal counsel to see if a state entity can reduce or restrict worship attendance.
Well,
because worship is under common law.
Well, 8 days, the way you're doing it, you could turn 8 days into a year.
I can't afford it, sir.
Well, but
no, let's be realistic. There's just no money for that kind of stuff.
I know. But we need to see what X number of days you can live with and see if we can live that too.
Well, then we'd have to define, does the prep work and the cleanup work count in the day event?
Prep and cleanup does not count. It's actually when people are there.
I think we said in the application 6 to 8.
But some of those are going to be 3-day events.
We'll set a maximum.
So what I'm saying,
days.
Maybe 18 days.
That would be fine. Yeah, because doing a multi-day event's very expensive.
That's an example. I'm not.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's what I'm saying.
I like 18.
Okay. So that's all the questions I have right now. Mr. Light, in light of?
Mr. Henry, thank you for picking up that thread. I think you're absolutely on the right track. To me, we don't want to try to micromanage this thing. But I think the term that maybe you were kind of angling for is sort of event days. And if it may be sensible to try to say that, it's really the event days with, maybe over 20 cars, but not to exceed 60, so that your small events, the little things that you do more routinely, aren't touched on at all, because I don't think any of us are concerned about those. So it's really about these events that are, in the, dozens of cars that I think is where the public interest creeps in at all. I think so to me, Mr. Henry, where you were going with the, maybe 18 or 20 event days, and an event day is defined as, an activity with, more than 20 cars, not to exceed 60 cars, and not to exceed 200 people. Now I think we're starting to see, and I will accept the point that I'm not sure what our rights are with respect, and what the right way to go. But from setting the the worship limit question aside for the moment, and I think as we're looking at this from the standpoint of just events, that kind of number starts to me to feel like, within some reasonable bounds that wouldn't be constraining on any of the scenarios that have been so far sort of articulated. Plenty of room to still, grow and realize the vision that you all are so passionate about. But I think it also gives your neighbors some level of comfort beyond simple anecdotes that you can't afford the Rolling Stones. I do think there's got to be something in there, and I don't know. I think we're getting there in my mind's eye, at least. Mr. Henry, maybe back to you, or
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, I think we're zeroing in on this. I think at this point, let's see if, go ahead.
So how's this sound?
May I just say something before we propose a motion?
I ain't making no motion.
He's not making a motion, he's just asking a question. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Go
I
ahead.
didn't go to Rappahannock. So, event is defined as a gathering of more than 20 people. So if y'all go up there one evening to have a Bible study or something, you need to go up there in 4 or 5 cars, and sit there and pray and watch the sun go down, or study the word. That's not an event, okay? 8 events per year for a total use of the property of 20 days.
8 discrete events per year, maximum of 20 days per year.
And maximum of 60 cars.
Okay.
You want to put that in the form of a motion?
Mr. Kohler.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. Sorry.
No problem.
Go ahead, Rick.
I just wanted to say that we did receive a signed petition, people who actually looked like almost all of them, if not all, lived on Headwaters Road. And they were concerned about traffic. I know you have a lot of people on the whole Chester Gap that are behind you, and or at least some percentage that answered your questionnaire. But you do have people on that road who are worried about how much traffic there's going to be even for walking on that road or whatever. It isn't a very big road, so I think we do need to be considerate of this.
Right.
And I'd also like to add, I thank you for making that point, Mr. Puller, because I don't know how many have been able to get up there and see the property, but it is, although it is own residential village, it is a highly bucolic, very quiet area with narrow, as you say, a very narrow road going up to that parcel. So to say that 60 cars, I'm not sure that the numbers you were saying are wrong. That may be exactly where we need to go. But an event defined as no more than 20 people, I think actually for that area, 20 people is pretty significant. And to say that can happen any amount of time all year long, I mean, if we are imposing restrictions, that may be a little broader than we want to go for that particular area. I don't know if others who have been up there have thoughts on that.
Okay. And just, I think we're close here. So procedurally, just for those who weren't here last time, the Planning Commission simply makes a recommendation for approval of denial. In this case, it's a special use permit, which means it goes to a separate body called the Board of Zoning Appeals. And so wherever we end up tonight, the next step is the Board of Zoning Appeals, and Board of Zoning Appeals also will have a public hearing. So if you've enjoyed tonight's experience, you can enjoy it again. At this time, I would entertain a motion to move this along. Mr. Henry, are you prepared?
Sure.
Okay, great.
I'd like to make a motion that we pass this on to the BZA with the recommendation of approval, subject to 8 events per year for a total days of 90 days, excluding set up and take down.
20 days?
20 days.
Oh, I thought I heard 90.
No, 20 days.
Okay, sorry.
Maximum of 60 cars in an event is defined as greater than 20 people at the site. If less than 20 people goes to the site for a church activity, that's not defined as an event.
Okay, thank you for crafting that.
Let me just see if there's.
Could I add?
Just 1 second, he's just,
And compliance with all other state and local laws, and no renting of the property out to other parties.
so including the conditions that are already in the staff report as part of your motion? Right? I think those are all in the,
Yes.
I'll pull them up.
just incorporate by reference,
Corporate, yeah.
the staff recommended conditions.
Yeah. That's it.
I
Okay,
will second that motion.
okay, great, thank you. Any,
I was just gonna stay
Okay.
at the staff
okay,
recommendations.
The other thing we haven't discussed at all, though, is whether there would be any amplified sound or music, or whether there would be any events past a certain time. And so I think that, given the quiet nature of the neighborhood, that might be appropriate. I don't know if Mr. Henry would consider
Mr.
adding.
Michael is here, and he can take that to the BZA with him, and I'm sure he'll bring that up next month. Right, Mr. Michael?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
all
Thank you.
right, great.
Yes.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Kohler?
All right.
Ms. Ritter?
Aye.
Ms. Ishii?
Nay.
Mr. Light?
Aye.
Mr. Henry?
Aye.
And I also. So that's a recommendation for approval to the Board of Zoning Appeals. Thanks for your patience tonight, everyone. And thanks again for coming out. It's a lot more fun volunteering in this capacity when there are people in the audience. So thanks for keeping it interesting. Appreciate it. We're just going to take a 5-minute break. Thank you.
Ordinance, just to put the name up there. So that's what we've been dealing with, but if we're gonna do these ordinance changes, let's somehow get some way of enforcing them, because it's not just the sign ordinance. There's all, particularly contractors' lots are all over the county, and I don't know how many of them are permitted, but that's something we have to deal with. My second issue on the sign ordinance is the last section that has been added, and that's on the public art.
Yeah.
And I have been collecting art since I was 18 years old. So that's a lot of years. And I presently, in my front yard, I counted them tonight, there's like 25 items in there that would qualify as public art. They're visible from the roadway, and am I going to be required to have a permit for each one of those items? And just to give you an example, I brought one of them, one of the smaller ones, because also the ordinance is very gray in, what's public art, how big is it, whatever. So I brought Peter, who resides in our front yard, and he's very visible from the road. And he's a sculptor. And is Peter going to require a permit? And what's going to be the cost of the permit? And like I said, I've got 25 pieces out there that are on the front of the house and everything. Is it enforceable? Is it, to a certain extent, a violation of First Amendment rights, in that basically it's freedom of expression for people to, have Peter in their front yard, in the garden, but according to the wording in the ordinance, this guy's public art. So I just, in your discussions or whatever, this is something, it's a reality check or whatever, and that, how do you enforce it, number one? And what is going to be gained from it, and is it all for one piece of art that's one sign that was put up that was called art, and because of that one item in Sperryville, we now have this article that can affect everybody in the county, and it would just be unmanageable. So,
Great, thank you. Anyone else wishing to make general public comments? Sir, it's very important that you state your name and your voting district.
So it's Chris Parrish, Stonewall Hawthorne District. And first of all, I'd like to speak in support of the Swindlers application. I'm a very close neighbor, not abutting. There is one property in between us, but I'm right there in the neighborhood. I know the site. I've been to a big wedding there. Worked out just fine. And it's kind of down in a hole where you're not going to see the parked cars from the road to any extent. And I think it's a decent, sensible application. And the other thing that I wanted to address concerns the sign ordinance. And it's particularly important because we all value our view shed in this county. And I have a growing concern with temporary signs. They're distracting, and they do distract from the view shed. And some of them are actually profane. And I've talked to most of the realtors in the county, and none of them really have a big objection to not have their signs out there. I've been to other places where there's like no temporary signs, including realtor signs. And the realtors do very well because they know that the clients have to contact them to find property, and they do fine. I would love to see a public hearing so that you all could have some citizen input on this particular item, temporary signs. The political signs are controlled by the state, so that's not affected. And I'm not saying that we need to ban, all temporary signs completely, but there could at least be some type of time limit. If somebody has a yard sale, they could have a sign up for 3 to 5 days, that kind of thing. And of course, it's not going to affect businesses or the farms or signs, or like people that want to put a name on their property. Those are permanent signs. That's different. But I think it would be a good idea to have a public hearing on the subject and find out what the actual citizens of Rappahannock County actually feel about it. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for coming out, Chris.
Yeah.
Anyone else wishing to speak during the general public comment period? Okay. War of attrition, everyone's gone, so we'll close the public comment period. And we have 3 applications, 2 special use permit applications and 1 special exception permit application. The first is special use permit 22-02-01 Sun and Young. This is tax map number 27-56F. This is an application for a tourist home. Are you representing the property owners, ma'am? Okay, great. So, Ms. Summers, if you just quickly summarize the application for us.
Sure. The owners are wishing to use their existing home as a 4-bedroom tourist home. The property will be professionally managed by a property manager, BHS and Culpepper. EDOT had no objections to this request. The health department commented that the septic system was originally approved in 2020 for 3 bedrooms, and then in 2021 the system was expanded. They recommended the main house occupancy be limited to 4 people, and the accessory building also be limited to 300 gallons.
Okay. Do you want to make any statement about the application, or? Okay, and are you the property manager, or?
Yeah, I'm with the property management company.
Okay.
So yes, I'm one of the
Okay. I will I actually, I know the property, some of you might also know it. There is a neighbor directly adjacent to the property, and they, because of the way the property is sited, they look down into it. And I think it would, in my opinion, be good to have a public hearing here at the planning commission. That's because I know there's been sensitivity with activity on that property, given how narrow it is and given the neighbors' position relative to that property. So that's really all I have. I would be most comfortable if we had a public hearing on this application so that all the neighbors had a chance to provide input.
You know my position on these things. I agree. I mean, the application itself is pretty cut and dried, but again, without any input from anybody else, we have no idea what other issues there may be. So I'm prepared to make that motion unless others want to speak first.
Does anyone else have any comments on the application?
I'll just bring up to the applicant that you do have there is a deed restriction in your deed, which states that everything must conform to the Rappahannock County zoning ordinance as of 1986 as a single-family residential property. I'm not sure how that affects you really, but there are some limitations in the zoning ordinance about single-family dwellings and what's allowed, what's not allowed, so you might want to just look into that and be ready to address it.
Great. Anyone else have anything?
Well, actually, the only thing I had was about the year, and it sort of piggybacks on Rick's concern about what is actually permitted on the property.
Okay. Great. So, yeah, you might just mention the property owners, that deed restriction, and then, our staff will take a quick look at it as well. Mr. Henry, do you have anything? No?
So, you're with VH what?
VHS Property Management. We're in
That it?
We manage one other vacation rental in Madison County, so we kind of have an idea, but of course every county is different.
Right.
I do know that one is obviously a rural area, it's in Syria, so I'm kind of a stickler about, a lot of traffic and, growth and bringing the people from DC down and everything. But from what I've learned from the one in Madison, it hasn't caused too much traffic or any, too much disturbances.
Good. That's good input.
Yeah.
Is this for use for the main house only or for the accessory building?
So it's for the accessory building as well. We weren't going to use the rec building first, for anybody to stay in. But the health department said that we could have 1 bedroom in the rec building and 3 bedrooms in the main house, or 2 in each, I believe. I'll bring it up. Yeah, so, 2 bedrooms in each structure, or 3 bedrooms in the main house and 1 bedroom in the accessory building. So we would probably do 3 bedrooms in the main house and 1 bedroom in the accessory building. But we're not renting it out to 2 separate parties, they have to be all in the same party.
So, can I ask a couple of questions here?
Yeah,
This
please.
might help jumpstart next month. Are you an agent?
The agent?
Are you an agent, a real estate agent?
Yes, I'm a real estate agent.
You're a real estate agent.
Not
What-
very active, but.
What was your name again?
Ashley Reinhardt.
Ashley Reinhardt. Okay. So, this property is kind of interesting. It was a gentleman from Mongolia bought this place.
That's what I heard.
Kazakhstan.
Yeah.
Oh, the new owner?
The old owner
Okay.
that built it, okay? So, and he bought the property and built this house in the main house. And then he got a permit to build this other building. And it's a very, very large building, and it was conditioned space. When I was in it, was not quite finished. I guess he was gonna have a kitchen, it was gonna have a sauna area. And I think he was kind of gonna use it as a communal area for his brethren from
Kazakhstan.
Kazakhstan. And they had riding arenas down there with all the horses and saddles and everything from Kyrgyzstan,
Yeah.
and all this thing. It was a real cultural
They have a group
experience.
there where they have their table and their
Yeah.
pillows and a processing building for, I guess, they had goats or sheep
Yeah,
or something
yeah.
like that, yeah.
Yeah. And that drain field was built for the original house. And I don't know whether it was added onto for this place. And the building was built too close to the property line. Did you know that?
Yes, I did learn that.
What did they do, chop off 3 feet or something?
That's what I think so.
Uh-huh, yeah. And it's a pretty interesting scenario
I've
there.
never seen anything like it.
I haven't either.
How am I?
Yeah, yeah.
Which, yeah, I mean, and that's what, I know how all of that affected the neighbors, and we were hearing about that a lot at the time, so.
That accessory building is very much out of character, is all I'll say about the property and the community and all that. And when I saw that, I thought, this is a living area. And how
Yeah.
could it be?
Permitted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, there's questions we'll have next month.
Okay.
Yeah, because it was sold, you probably already know, those owners don't own it anymore.
Right.
Yeah, so I wasn't aware of
Yeah.
what plans they had for it or anything like
A
that.
lot happened in a short period of time, and people got stirred up about it,
That's
so.
what I'm understanding.
Yeah.
And I was actually very surprised that they were able to put that building up, because of Rappahannock County, so I was surprised in that process.
Okay. So we might ask you a lot of questions next month, so be prepared.
Okay.
So, you want to go ahead and make a motion, someone?
Did Rick have
Oh,
some-
yeah.
Well, am I mistaken, or did I see that this was a 3-bedroom septic on this?
I think they said a 4-bedroom septic, so, 3-bedroom for the house and 1 for the.
There is a separate septic for it?
So
I didn't catch-
2020,
I'm sorry, I didn't catch.
Here, so there's a 3 bedrooms. It was originally approved for 3 bedrooms.
Originally for 3 bedrooms, yeah.
And then
Okay.
the system was expanded,
Oh, it was expanded.
and an accessory building was connected to the
Okay,
septic
all right.
system.
Thank you.
Okay.
I just had one question, was when I went to try to look at the property, it had a locked gate. Is there any way that could be accessible so that if we did want to look at it before the next hearing, we could see it?
So, by locked gate, you mean it needs to be just open for you to access, you're allowed to open it? Or did it
Whatever.
have a lock
Well, we
on it?
could
It has a
walk
lock
out.
on it. or I
Just
guess
so
walk
they
on.
could go take a look at it before the public
Yeah,
hearing.
it should be locked now, because I come and go every once in a while, there's no lock. We advise the owners to not keep a lock on it, because we have contractors in and out.
Yeah, and just if you could let them know that the members of the planning commission will probably want to take a look at the property before, yeah. Okay, and so I think where we're at it is we're going to schedule it for a public hearing here. So just let your clients know that we'll have a public hearing next month. And if they want to be directly involved, it's up to them, or, you seem to have a lot of knowledge of their plans, that's fine too. But it'll be advertised for a public hearing, which will give the neighbors an ample opportunity to at least be aware of the contemplated use as a tourist home type property.
Yeah, that would make me feel better too.
Yeah, and then,
I don't want to step on anybody's.
no, we appreciate that. And then, similar to the church application, then following the public hearing, it gets sent on to the Board of Zoning Appeals. And they're the ones who would issue the permit or not if they chose to deny it. So it's a 2-step process.
Mr. Chairman, you have a motion on the table without a second.
Well, actually, we haven't made a
We're
motion
not.
yet.
Well, there's no motion yet, yeah. I was just,
But good point.
yeah, we're not there yet, so. Okay,
Okay, I move that we move this to a public hearing for our next public hearing.
okay, is there a second for Mr.?
I second.
Okay, great, any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye, great, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Lloyd, sorry, did you have any comments on this?
No, I'll catch it next time.
Sorry about that. Sorry about that. Okay, all right, next, special use permit 22-02-02 Rissing. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly. Thanks for your patience tonight. And tax map number 50-1-B for an accessory dwelling unit. And Ms. Summers, if you could.
Sure. Mr. and Mrs. Racine has requested a special use permit for an accessory dwelling unit on their property located at 100 Eagles Nest Lane in Boston pursuant to 17036A and 17062G. The property is 9.9 acres in size and is zone conservation. The proposed accessory dwelling unit will contain 1,119 square feet of living space and a current accessory structure, and it is 170 feet from the main home. BDOT has no objections to the request. The health department commented that the septic was originally installed in '06 and approved for 4 bedrooms. A connection between the garage and the septic was approved in '17, originally for a bathroom in the garage. They have no objections to the proposed to convert the garage into living space, provided that the total number of bedrooms in the 2 structures combined is 4 or less.
Great, and we appreciate you being here. Do you want to make any comments, and then we'll just open it to questions?
You know, I know it's been a long night. I will follow your recommendation. If you recommend not doing anything, I won't do it.
It's a space above a 3-car garage that was going to be a woodworking shop for Ed. The health has caused him to not be able to use machines and saws. So our son just got married to his wife, and they live in Baltimore. So they want to move in there, and so they decide where they want to go. So right now, there's a very nice bathroom, but no kitchen. So I think they'd like to have more privacy, and we really want to get a kitchen in there, small. There's only 1 bedroom.
It'd be good to get them in the county. That's great, and congrats on the wedding.
And, you know, they're both young kids, they're just getting started. One works for the feds, the other one helps with breastfeeding, you know, and in the interim, while all this was rolling out, I was diagnosed with brain cancer.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, me too. But the good news is it was caught early enough. And so, you know, we are very hopeful. But it does set up this question, which is, no matter how nice that structure is, what do you do?
Yeah.
It was going to be this lovely workshop. And now it's really a lovely building.
Yeah.
And the fact that they want to move in there, just newlyweds need a kitchen.
Right.
It's like, hey, Mom, we could use your kitchen. So our hope is to then turn it in, which I think the designation is an accessory building.
Yeah.
It was a shop. Is that what it was going for? And now
It was an accessory building, and now with
Accessory dwelling unit.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
there's a picture of it.
So that's the whole sheet.
That's a pretty neat building. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really neat, well, I see it.
Yeah. Wow.
You know, if you gotta do it, you might as well do it right. And so, and it's all hardy board on the outside and concrete, you know, so that's it.
Okay, and then real quickly, Ms. Summers, so proximity to the primary dwelling unit, it just has to be within what, 500?
200 feet, and they have 170 feet.
Okay, and then
So
maximum square footage of?
2,000.
Okay.
And they're
1,100?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
A question on that, I don't have the statute in front of me, Michelle and Ms. Summers, so the dwelling is to be 1,119 square feet, or 1,119. The 2,000 foot requirement is, is that, or the 1,200, is that for the entire building or just the accessory dwelling unit, the dwelling? So in other words, I
Is it
assume that
1,200
building
square
is
feet?
bigger than,
It's living space.
it's a living space.
It's
okay.
1,200 square feet of living
Yes.
space.
All
Okay.
right, thank you.
Yeah.
So I think we're under that. Tom.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
We're also 200 feet or more than any touching point all the way around. You know, the exterior to the east, to the south, to the west, and to the north.
And I called as many neighbors as I could, and the people that I didn't know.
This is great.
And they were nice, and they said, yeah, sure.
Yeah, exactly, no blowback from me.
Good. Kind of an odd question. What kind of internet service do you have there?
Absolutely. Really?
What do you have?
Oh, we have Peacock broadband.
Okay.
But they just put 2 little wireless things between
Okay.
the houses. It's faster than all.
So your son and his wife can work there pretty effectively. Okay, that's good.
Yeah, they'll be fine. In fact, that little hub right there is faster than what we had in Vienna.
Really?
We're trying to get you fiber as soon as possible, so you'll have backup, so.
Well, I mean, to be honest with you, we have a pretty good setup right now.
Okay, good. All right, anyone else? Mr. Light, so as not to forget you.
Well, I had a question, but I think it's been answered, that the photo that's now on the screen is the accessory building. It doesn't appear that we have, is there a photograph showing this relative to the primary dwelling, or is there something that includes it? It's not super important, but I'm just trying to get a better sense of the proximity, but that's my only question.
You know, we can do that. Could I borrow a pen from someone for a minute?
So this kind of, is it, so the one on the left is the one we're talking about in this picture?
All three of them,
The only picture you see is the accessory. I took the picture of the whole house with my back to our house is red and that's green.
Okay.
It's red house and green.
It is shown in this picture of the orientation on the screen in the room is off. So your house is at the top of the screen and the accessory is
I see
at
it.
the bottom of the screen.
Yep,
Yep. For Mr. Light, I have turned that in the screen.
just turn your head over.
You can see it on the overhead.
Okay. Anyone else have questions?
Plenty of parking too, so.
Oh, that's great. Lucky the kids want to move there.
Yeah, no, it's great news. Yeah, we need more. We need more. Yeah. Okay, does someone want to put forward a motion on this?
I move that we approve this application.
You send it to the Board of Zoning Appeals with a recommendation for approval? Okay, that's a motion. A second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Henry. Any further discussion?
Just the usual. This has nothing to do with your application. I just believe that when we have these things, we should always be having a public hearing, which this is not, and that's just our internal rules. So when I abstain, it's not because I don't think your
Okay.
application looks great.
Thanks for saying that. Okay.
And I could just comment, I often agree with Ms. Ishii. This one strikes me though as very much a limited residential use, really just reconfiguring bedrooms. And I will also just plug in for anybody who might be thinking about leaving or hanging around that we'll be talking later about perhaps changing our approach so that we don't have to take up 2 months to get public input on these kinds of applications. But that's a topic later on the agenda. For now, I'm fine with the motion.
Okay, great. Motion to send to the Board of Zoning Appeals with a recommendation for approval. Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? And one abstention? Okay, great, thanks. So you'll go to the Board of Zoning Appeals next. So that's a recommendation for approval. It's a great use, and we really hope your kids come back. That's great.
Well, so do we, and I wish it was under different circumstances.
Yeah.
I mean, I really do. But I'm still here, you know?
Good.
For that, I'm very grateful, so.
Yep, our thoughts are with you. And
I mean, gee, they pulled a tumor out of my head the size of a super large coffee cup.
wow,
Yeah, and,
But then he was walking around the hospital, he was all.
good.
I wonder what.
We'll wish you the best. All right, great.
To send you guys.
No, we're good here. We're done. So next one, the Board of Zoning Appeals.
See that guy sitting there?
Yeah, and he's gonna take good care of you. Right, Mr. Mackel? Okay. Yeah, thanks for hanging out. Sorry you had to wait so long. Okay, finally, here we are. Happy anniversary. What a way to spend it. We should have brought in catering. Okay.
Say hi to your mom. Say hi to mom.
All right, great. So this is a special exception permit application for the Swindlers 22-02-03 tax map 42-4A. This is for a conference center, and hopefully we've all read their contemplated use, but Ms. Summers, you can just give us the basics.
They wish to operate a conference center so they can host weddings on their property. The property is agricultural, 50 acres in size, and they wish to use the existing barn that's on the property.
And was there a specification a number of times per year? I thought there was some, 12.
Yeah, the original letter that I submitted or the application, well, no, BoardDocs too, it's in there. Like, we're just asking for up to 12 events a year we would host.
So they can sleep there and still keep their house.
Okay. And who are your neighbors?
We reached out, our adjoining neighbors are Bob and Susan Lane to our east, and then Dee Dee Payne to our southwest. We sent them a letter on our own before you all did. Both of them reached out to us, said we have their blessing, and our other neighbors, her mom, and I think I've talked to mom too.
Okay, good.
And we're very grateful. We didn't, Mr. Parrish, as he said, he's one parcel over. We had no idea he was going to show up here tonight, and we appreciate that. But
Great.
the only other neighbor is just right across the road, which that's a corner lot, and I don't know who.
And the barn is pretty far into your property, right?
It's almost smack dab in the center of it.
We have ample parking. It'll only fit 150 max, so we're talking small venues.
Yeah, we're in the application, right? We said no more than 150 people. It's all in the letter.
Okay.
I can wait to get if you want.
Yeah. There will be an end time. There's no outdoor music, outdoor lighting, other than what's already existing on the barn.
And you guys are veterans. You had that big wedding there. I saw all the photos, so.
And we got a grandchild.
Yeah, this is for her to retire.
Yeah.
That's the whole purpose of this.
Great.
For her to retire, so please approve it.
Mr. Light, do you have any questions or comments?
No, I just sort of reiterate everything that's been said. I think it's a fine use of a very suitable property. There have been some trial runs. I do appreciate that the application really has itself addressed a lot of the limitations with respect to amplified music, parking, number of events, size of events, etc. So I would thank and congratulate the Swindlers for a very thorough and thoughtful application. I will say this is not quite the slam dunk of a continued residential use. So this, to me, if I'm going to be consistent with my kind of public interest hat on, I do think a public hearing would be worthwhile for this, but I have no problems with the application and would expect to support it.
Okay, anyone else?
Just a quick question. So you want up to 12 events per year, but that's not like one event per month. So you could have one a week in the summer or one every 2 days or something.
Maybe like 2 in May, but we're.
I'm not interested in working that hard to have more than like 2 or 3 in 1 month, I can tell you that.
Right.
Yeah, but you're right, that's exactly right. We don't anticipate doing much there in November, December, and January.
Well, there wouldn't be any, and we have no heating source in there.
Right.
And
That's a good point, yeah.
Yes, very important. July and August are probably out because it's too hot, but they could have fans, it's open to it. I would not even recommend, December, January, February, and March would probably be good for this as well, so.
But again, back to my work ethic, the odds of having more than 2 in 1 month are somewhere between slim and none, and as my dad used to say, slim left count.
Yeah, how long is the driveway there? From the.
I was looking through my notes.
Yeah,
earlier,
look at
I know I
the-
measured it, but I didn't write it down. I will tell you, I'm terrible at estimating distances, but what I call the crown of the driveway, where it starts to drop down towards more, from there to the road is, I would say it's from here to the other side of the building across the street.
From the road to the barn, I don't think it's 250 feet.
Yeah, so that's.
It's not a football field.
No, it's not quite a football field, but yeah, but that's why we have the parking where we do as well, so there's no backup. They worked very well when we had our daughter's wedding.
And it's a circular driveway.
Yeah, that's
On purpose. So any backups when they're waiting to get a good spot happen in the property, not down on the road.
470 feet from the road to the red roof barn.
There you go.
Thank you.
Wow.
More than a football.
More than a football field. Ball and a half. Wow.
You're as bad at it as me, I guess.
Okay. Any other questions or comments?
No, it was a very complete application.
Yeah, it's great.
So, did we have a motion yet?
No, not yet.
I'll let the representative from his district make the motion.
Mr. Light,
I move that we advance this to a public hearing at our next meeting.
I'll second it.
okay, thanks. Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Thank you. Normally we would have given you local privilege to go
Please.
first, but tonight you could see everyone was local.
And thank you guys, two things, all of you for doing this, because I know how thankless it is. And I especially want to single out this young lady over here, who, all the compliments that we got on her application, thanks to her.
Well, thanks for saying that.
She gave me a lot of time. I've tested the bejesus out of her for a while. She was always very good and really helped us put together a good application.
Thanks for saying
We do
that.
this once, you know?
Yeah, we know what.
Yeah, we come back.
Good.
All right?
Thank you.
Hey, thanks a lot. Happy anniversary. I don't think anything's open now, so no dinner tonight.
Our house is up.
No, we're going to the vote. No, not tonight.
Okay.
Over the weekend.
Great.
Thank you
Good
all
to see you all. Thanks for your patience.
Thank you again, Michelle.
You're very welcome.
Okay, next on our agenda is, I think it should be a relatively brief discussion. I want to thank Mr. Light for doing the preliminary work on this. This is just, he took a stab at 170-55, which has embedded in it the language about preliminary reviews, which is an ongoing struggle for us. And so, Mr. Light, I'll turn it over to you. And Michelle printed out his marked up version of that section of our zoning ordinance. Thanks again for your initiative in this regard.
Sure, and I certainly didn't mean to bum rush anybody on this, but I do feel like, we come up on this quite often. We get together, we do these preliminary reviews, and some of us want to hear from the public. Most of us would rather have heard from the public, but we often have concern about making the applicant come back for another month. And it just occurred to me, and I know I've spoken to several other of you, so I don't claim this to be my own idea by any stretch, but it seems to me that most interests would be well served by simply giving notice and having the public hearing the first time we talk about these things. Then we have the best of both worlds. We have a 1 month potential review cycle, and we also have the benefit of having a hearing and giving the public fair notice. It wasn't quite clear to me. It seemed that our local authority, I appreciate those opinions. I actually forgot that I had requested that work back in 2018. But it seems that it's pretty clear that, it is within our authority to have a public hearing. So I don't think it's an extension to say that it doesn't seem like there's any question about our legal authority to modify our approach. So this is just a part of the routine consideration of these applications. To me, the one question that I didn't feel that I could nail in my own mind, even let alone convince you all that it's a good idea, is if it had any kind of timing implications with respect to the notice requirements. It does seem, full disclosure, that this would mean that a little bit more in advertising costs than perhaps we're currently incurring by only having few of the hearings. But to me, the added value of knowing that the public has been notified and has the opportunity and the invitation to come and speak on an application the first time we look at it more than outweighs that potential incremental cost. So that's all I've got.
So, I was just looking at the marked up version. I don't know if it's all the changes are tracked. Like in section C, it just shows a deletion of the word for. Is that all you altered in section C?
I didn't think I touched. Wait a minute.
I just want to make sure we all are clear on what you're changing.
Let me open up that file. I did try to track the changes.
Maybe the track changes didn't print. I mean, there are column notes with a deletion in section E.
No, I had marked it and deleted and added some language about public hearing and moved some things around. So
So maybe this printed version is not, yeah, we should, can he share his screen?
Yeah, Garrett. You do some gymnastics, we can make it work.
What's that?
We can make it work.
Okay. Yeah, Gary, we'd like to see what you did, like your markup version, because I think what we're looking at doesn't show the track changes. So we'll try to let you share your.
Sorry, I'm talking to mute. I will share my, you cannot start screen sharing while the other participant is sharing, so we'll do that. Okay.
Thanks.
And I'm gonna share my screen and not trouble you guys with all that is already open. Let's see. Can you?
Yeah, we can see the document. Let's see if this is, I mean, it might be what we're looking at. I would expect to see.
It could be that I messed up too in
It's no problem.
tracking. Let's see what we got here.
Yeah, so this is different. Yeah, that shows the track changes. Okay, so in C,
Yeah, right.
yeah, the application shall be placed on the planning commission. Planning commission, agenda for public hearing. Okay, yeah, so this wasn't showing the track changes hearing at, and it just showed that one deletion for its next regular month. Okay, that's super helpful. That makes sense. Yeah.
And then the most changes are down to E.
E, yeah.
And this is where the 16 days, and I don't know if it struck me that if we go this route, we might want to extend that a bit, just to have them, I don't know. I guess if it's less than 16 days, it just rolls to the next meeting as it would now, but I would certainly defer to Michelle and Gary as to what's feasible there.
Yeah, Michelle and Gary, what do you think about that?
But the advertising requirement is, in 2204, is that the second advertised publication can't be any closer than 5 days to the public hearing, nor more than 20 days from the public hearing date. So there's a pretty broad range of when those two successive weeks can happen. 16 wouldn't always necessarily catch it based on, the weekly publication cycle. And
Okay, so should that 16 be a longer lead time?
depends on what you want.
Well, no, I mean, these seem like really sensible changes, so
One of the big things here is that there would have to be a very clear expectation that nothing comes through and is advertised for the planning commission until staff thinks that it is 100% absolutely complete. And then it's going to be advertised, and most of the time we'd like to give authorization to advertise. We're just going to go straight off and advertise it, and it's the first time you're ever going to see it is when it's advertised for public hearing.
Yeah, if there's a concern about, a stronger completeness request, and I'm sorry, am I on mute again?
No, you're fine, we hear you.
No. It does strike me that another possible addition to address the point that Gary made would be back up in C, which refers to the zoning administrator's responsibility. Perhaps we could add, to be placed on the planning commission's agenda for public hearing at its next regular monthly meeting following the filing of a complete, actually it says complete there. So to me, the opportunity and responsibility for the zoning administrator to deem the application complete already exists in the language. So I think, frankly, what I'm removing is just superfluous baggage about our kind of second guessing whether the application is complete.
Yeah, you're right.
So in essence, what you did here, Gary, is basically saying that every application goes into a public hearing potentially immediately, and you're eliminating the the first date where we just talk and get to be friends?
Like we did with
Yeah.
the swingers.
So basically, we're going back to the way we did it 5 years ago.
Exactly,
Okay.
and apparently
So-
we did it this way, but it was not compliant, so I'm not sure why we didn't just change it to the way we wanted to do it then, but that's what I'm trying to do here.
So you cool with it? Okay.
Yeah, I think this is
I
great.
think it's great.
And long overdue, and,
Yeah, I agree.
the only thing I might, just as a thought in the back of our minds, again, it's a question of completeness, because I wasn't around when this was, instituted, but my understanding from what I've heard y'all folks say is that it was because we were concerned about applications being complete. I admit to some sense of confusion in my own mind as to what is meant by a complete application. Is there a standard for that, or do we have a standardized checklist? It seems like when I see these applications come in, they don't seem to necessarily follow a standardized thing. So I don't know if we had some standardized.
So there's a checklist on the applications, and if they have all of the items on that checklist, and once I receive VDOT and health approval, that's when it's deemed complete.
You include the checklist in on the package.
Yep.
I don't know, and this is just me questioning.
VDOT likes VDOT and the health department like the copy sent from my office directly to them, so we're all looking at the same document. So then I have to wait for their comments back.
No, that's great, and I don't have any problems with that. I just sometimes you'll have some of the things checked off, sometimes you don't, and that may be because you're moving fast. I just wondered, is that, like that checklist, does that go with every application, and you're always comfortable that all those things have been completed?
If I don't have it, I contact them what I need.
Okay.
Okay.
So if I may, my other comment on this is, if we do it this way and we find that there is something lacking, we're not tying our hands here with what we decide to do. We could continue a public hearing if we felt that something wasn't adequate. This just takes the pressure off us when something seems pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
Just as we did tonight, to say, gosh, I hate to make these people come back a second time.
Yep.
And in this way, the exception would be when we need to have them come back a second time.
I think it's great.
So
Yeah, I think that's right. Go ahead, sorry.
I've reformatted these applications to try to pull more information out of folks. And there is a statement on these new applications that I've implemented this year that says this application will not be accepted until all of the following has been provided. Failure to provide any of this information may cause a delay in your application being taken up by the planning commission. So right there it is.
Thank you very much for that.
Don't confuse submittal of documents with a check mark to mean that they're adequate.
Correct.
And that's just the rope that you're giving to the applicant. You have to expect you're gonna have some junky applications coming to you. You're not gonna be coaching people and saying, well, I think we need a site plan for this, or we don't need a site plan. That's done. So like think about the brewery on 211, where there's a lot of back and forth going on before you ever got to a public hearing. Asking for a site plan and asking for the site plan to be revised and all this stuff. None of that happens anymore.
But, isn't Gary Light's point a good one though? Because it's in those cases where something's an outlier and is more complicated than we realized once we got into it in a public hearing right off the bat, we just could continue that, right? You hear from the public and just say, look, we're going to continue this public hearing until the next meeting, and then we have time on the back end to sort it out, which then sifts out all the people that we don't want to, have coming back for a hearing just because that's the way our system is.
Yeah, you could provide for continued opportunity for public input at a future meeting, or close the public hearing and then have further contemplation by the body with more information submitted. But I think the thing that's lost is, at the end of the day, the Board of Zoning Appeals and the Board of Supervisors might not look at anything you did. And in the recent court case, the judge said, what does the Planning Commission have to do with any of this?
There you go.
Well, the way I feel about it is that if we are irrelevant, then what are we wasting our time? Why is this not coming to us?
Read the state code.
Well, what the state code says is that it gets referred to the planning commission, and the planning commission is supposed to be made up of qualified experts who are gonna look at the good zoning principles in the comprehensive plan. So it seems to me that doing it this way, we've eliminated 2 hearings for 90% of the people. Right now, except that we moved some of them on, if we did a public hearing for each one of these things, everybody has to come in twice. The only thing we're adding here is basically public notice. That is really all we're adding, because we're cutting out the public, the preliminary review. So all we're adding is a chance to hear from the public, and it's the same number of times they have to come in. If you only have to do it once.
You're absolutely doing 2 public hearings now.
Yeah, and there's nothing, I mean, there's no argument that we don't have the right to have a public hearing, I don't think. I don't think there's any credible argument that says we don't have the right. And we, any good planning practice would suggest if we're trying to judge the fit with the community and the public interest and the impact on neighbors, to form a recommendation without public input, I can't believe anyone would ever contemplate doing that. So I'm kind of tired of hearing this, are we relevant or not? We have the authority to do it. We should do it every time public input is critical. I think this is way overdue.
Okay, so for Michelle and Gary, does that 16 days need to be tweaked?
It's just a cutoff, so it's what year during what month, right?
So how do we make it work for any month during the year? Make it 21 days?
We can look into it.
Well, I know, but it would be nice to schedule a public hearing on an ordinance amendment and move on with it.
Well, I think the way it works, the reason it's not so fully predictable, so if you make it 21 days and someone shows up on day 20, they're going to miss the next meeting, whereas if you left it at 16, they would have made the next meeting. But if someone comes in, on day 15 before the meeting, they're going to have to wait approximately 45 days to get to the meeting. So, there's no one answer that's going to make it better for everybody. So to me, the 16 days is kind of the middle of the prior month, which seems about right, so that no one would ever have to wait more than approximately 6 weeks to get through. So I'm not arguing that it needs to be longer. I don't think it really gets there, as long as 16 days under kind of normal circumstances would allow for the notice and comment to be
Mr. Curry?
I think it will.
Mr. Curry?
Yeah.
You agree with that?
I'm trying to count my calendar right now.
But I mean, this looks great, Gary, and I'd frankly like to just move ahead with this in its current form, have a public hearing.
I think because your meeting's on Wednesday.
Yeah.
And the ad deadline is the preceding Tuesday. And you have to go back another week to have 2 successive weeks, would be the preceding Tuesday.
Mm-hmm.
That would, 16 days probably was derived specifically because of that. And that, I think, would be the absolute drop dead last time that if everything was done, an ad could go to the newspaper, show up in the first week's paper, second week's paper, Thursday, and then the next Wednesday would be the public hearing.
So
now, chances are someone's going to have to submit a couple weeks before that, because there's going to be days and weeks of back and forth with staff to get it.
Yeah, that's all, because a lot of times people don't have everything. I mean, they seem to let a lot of stuff slide.
But then it would just bump to the next month, right? So you say, well, it's your judgment, it's not complete. So in order to get
But we could insert the word complete in front of application on E just to emphasize the point. But I think we're sort of splitting hairs, because we're always going to have a bit of a fuzzy edge on, when submitting begins and when completion is confirmed.
So we've had problems in the past where there's been some time issues on applications and they had to be changed. So, Mr. Curry, I mean, what's the right number? I mean, what's the right way to do this thing right here? You see this all the time. It's your job. So tell us if this is right. If you have another recommendation,
well,
let's hear it.
The body's already contemplating, the Board of Supervisors is contemplating whether there should be this bifurcated system of BCA and BOS, SUP and SC. You already have that going. And I can tell you where I came from, we had special exceptions in conditional use permits. The differences were a special exception went to the BZA, and they're more or less perfunctory, and they kind of checked the box off. Conditional use permits required a public hearing at the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors. And so if you're already making a bunch of changes with SEs and SUPs, you might think of a pathway that still has two categories of permitted uses. One that has mandated two-stop public hearing process, and the other that doesn't, if there are two classes of uses that fit that.
I'm sorry, but Mr. Curry, we keep asking you one question and you keep answering another one.
Well, what was the question?
The question was, if we want to have this automatic public hearing for the applications that come before us, how many days prior to the meeting do we need to have the notice? And that's the question we keep asking, and you keep referring to whether it's a good idea that we have public hearings on all the applications. And I respect your opinion on that, but I feel like we've heard it and we don't agree with it. So what we're trying to do is figure out what the right number is.
Two things. I answered the question to 16 days. And the second thing, I'm pretty sure Al Henry just asked for me my opinion on how to do this.
On the days.
On that provision. So if we look at this in isolation, we're trying to solve something that's uncomfortable right now, the way we're operating the Planning Commission. And so this is a straightforward way to accomplish that. And then separate from this, on the Board of Supervisors track, there's a question about cleaning up maybe the use table and where the BZA and the Planning Commission fit in and the Board of Supervisors fits in. And I can guess that's going to take a longer period of time to remedy. I appreciate Gary Curry's comment that maybe this all could be handled at the same time, but my concern is this is something we can get done relatively quickly because it's a discrete, isolated part of the zoning ordinance that with very few track changes, it's resolved. And then I think later, when we get to this other question about the 170-36 and the Board of Supervisors and the BZA and the Planning Commission, how all that's going to work, we can deal with that separately. And if that requires us to come back to this later, so be it. But I'd like to just knock this out because we're dealing with it every time we meet. So that's my view.
I agree. That sounds right. I also just want to point out, Gary Light, that on 170-129 says, every application required under the provisions of this chapter shall be filed with the zoning administrator, and no application shall be officially on file or advertised for a public hearing until the application and all required accompanying submissions are submitted to the zoning administrator. When the application is complete, it shall be referred to the office for a public hearing to act on the same. So I think that's covered in a couple of places.
Okay.
Just for your comfort level. 170-129.
All right, so I'll entertain a motion. If you want us to schedule this, sure, go ahead.
Just on this subject or whatever, something else it's a mechanical problem that does come up, it's come up recently or whatever, is that when an applicant does not show up for the public hearing, and then to my knowledge, there's no wording in your rules or regulations or ours as far as how that is handled, and that there should be a statement in there that they are required or their legal representative are required to appear, and if they don't, the public hearing is canceled and they're going to have to pay to have it re-advertised. Because, like I said, it doesn't happen all the time, but when it does, I mean, it's kind of annoying when somebody doesn't show up, and there should be a consequence. And it's not that, I think it's a fair consequence.
But I see your point, and it does bother me when people don't show up, but at the same time, people have submitted applications, zoning administrators deemed it complete, and we're looking at an application. And I think if a question were to come up that the absent person was not there physically to answer, then it'd be a perfect situation that Gary Light described, which is, okay, well, we can't finish this tonight, so we'll talk about it next month, and try to compel the applicant to appear. I mean, I think it's a little punitive to say you must appear. I don't think that, if they have to appear to answer basic questions to allow us to make a decision, then we would say, look, we can't get this done tonight if they're not here. I mean, that's their choice.
It sounds like his point though is that they should pay for the additional notice, but that sounds like it may be no good in principle, might not be worth it in practice, but I don't know, do we have to notice a second time if they don't show up and we change the agenda? I assume we do.
Well, we're also gonna have, Ron was just saying, we're also gonna have people showing up that may wanna comment, and then what do we do?
Well, the other way of looking at it is if the applicant doesn't show up to defend their position, then they may not be upheld. They may be, their application may be denied.
Right, that was my long-winded point.
So, if they don't show up, they don't show up, that's on them. You can either table it or you can just say, decide based on your public.
Recommend denial.
Yeah, I think if people are putting in applications and they're serious about it, we saw that tonight. For example, swindlers were here for a preliminary review, so if people are serious about it, then it's up to them whether or not they feel like they should show up and talk to us. Okay, does anybody want to put forward a motion?
Could I just ask one simple thing? Can we add to the checklist that a sign would be posted, a temporary sign would be posted at a property for, at the time that it is approved for a hearing?
We have to have signs first. We don't have any signs.
I know we'd have to get some, but I'm just asking, I'd like to have that at some point on the checklist. I think the neighbors would find out a lot easier than, a lot of them don't read the paper.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Once we get signs, I'll be happy to put that on there.
Okay, that's a checklist, an administrator thing, not this.
I'll be
Okay.
happy to make a motion.
Okay, go ahead. Okay.
So I move that we recommend to the board, I suppose is the way to do this.
Well, we have to schedule a public hearing
Yeah.
for an ordinance amendment.
All right, thank you. I move that we move this to a public hearing, that we schedule a public hearing on this. Do we want to move it to the next available public hearing?
Yeah, it needs to be advertised in this form, inclusive of these changes.
Okay, I'll make that part of the motion. In this form, inclusive of these changes.
170-55. Okay.
Okay, yeah, I'll do that again. I move that we advertise for a public hearing for these changes submitted by Gary Light on section 170-55 of our ordinance.
Okay, is there a second?
I said, do you want to be more explicit about the changes or no? Like you could say.
Well, it's this document, so, all the changes are highlighted and that we reviewed. And the only one we were hung up on was the 16 days, and that seems fine.
But we could be more specific if you're more comfortable with that.
I just think there are two documents floating around, but.
Well, it's just, we're not seeing it. This is.
Thank you, that is a good point.
This, just, the track, you refer to the track changes presented by Vice Chairman White during our meeting.
I'm certain that what I sent is what you're seeing on my screen. I think it probably just didn't print well.
It just didn't, what it did is it didn't track the changes, it accepted them.
So, what we see on the screen.
Yeah, your motion is to schedule a public hearing for a revised version of 170-55, inclusive of the track changes that Mr. White presented during our meeting.
That's it.
Okay, Mr. Kohler?
I'll second it.
All right, great. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thanks.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you.
Thanks a lot for that.
Thank you all.
Yeah.
Okay, so what I thought we would do.
Recording stopped. Recording in progress.
what I thought we would do is like we did our last meeting, continue this meeting to a work session. Gary Curry, sorry, I keep using last names just not to confuse Gary's. Last time we had that work session on the sign ordinance, I thought it went really well and I really appreciate everyone's input. Do you recall what Wednesday of the month that was? Was it the first Wednesday?
Yes.
Okay, so could someone put forward a motion to continue this meeting to,
May 4th?
sorry?
May 4th?
Yeah, is that a holiday or anything funky?
No.
Okay, and we'll start earlier. We started at 6 PM last time.
Yep.
6 PM, courthouse is available?
Should be set out.
Can I just ask, is my memory just faulty on this, that we continued, we've already continued this?
No, we haven't.
In other words, we haven't set a work session up.
We have not.
Okay, I'm sorry, thank you.
Yeah, so it's to continue it until Wednesday, May 4th at 6 PM in the Rappahannock County Courthouse.
Yeah, I move that we continue this meeting to Wednesday, May 4th at 6 PM in the Rappahannock Courthouse.
Okay, second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Great, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Gary. White.
Sure.
All right. All right, that's it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Man, that was longer.